So you talked about how some of the frustration from that locker room situation came from the lack of offense supporting the defense. Well, the Broncos have scored just one touchdown in the last 2 games. Now they go to Kansas City, one of the toughest venues in the NFL, and the conditions don't look too favorable, really, for either team. Looks like a cold, rainy night on Sunday night. So how are they going to put some points on the board?
Well, they're going to have to hope that Kansas City's conservative approach on offense just keeps them in the game in a lot of ways, because Kansas City just doesn't run away from you. That's not how they're built, and they're also, except for in Week 1 against the Chargers, not really built to come back, although Kansas City's much healthier than the Broncos are right now when you talk about their two tight ends, A.J. Derby and Virgil Green, who are 1 and 2 in the depth chart in the concussion protocol. T.J. Ward seems to be fine. I'm not a doctor, and I'm not going through the concussion protocol, but he was in the locker room cutting it up with the rest of the DBs yesterday while we were allowed to be in there. And so they're healthy there, but they're just still banged up. And the Chiefs didn't have Dee Ford, had Justin Houston coming back from for his first game of the season, didn't have Dontari Poe, and all those guys are going to play. And you expect with what the Broncos are dealing with Matt Paradis, their best offensive lineman, you expect Dontari Poe to be a factor. So even with Justin Forsett, it's going to be a struggle a bit for the Broncos. They did put up 124 rushing yards and did score 24 points against the Chiefs. So it's not like they can't score on this team. And they've won in Arrowhead. I mean, they had won there a bunch the last few years with Peyton Manning, including last year in Week 2. It took a Jamal Charles fumble and Bradley Roby right place, right time, scoop and score. But they were able to go into Arrowhead and win. So it's not like they can't win there. And the weather is going to be a factor. You're right. It is going to be rainy. I think, as any offensive coach will tell you, the wind is the bigger issue. So when you hear there's going to be wind 10 to 15 miles an hour, you hope it's closer to 10 than 15, because Broncos' passing game with Trevor Siemian has been better vertically than it has been horizontally in terms of being productive when he has decided to let it rip and get the ball to Demaryius Thomas and Emmanuel Sanders. So I think cold is relative. I mean, I heard that it was maybe a high of 62 on Sunday compared to what it could be in Kansas City. I've covered a lot of games, and the coldest I can ever remember being on the road for sure was at Arrowhead in Josh McDaniels' last game in 2010, and I covered the Chiefs for a year back in 2003. I mean, it can be really, really cold. Michael, you know, you went to the University of Missouri. You know how cold it can be in Kansas City in December. Yep. And so I think they're catching a bit of a break from a cold standpoint, but really wind and with that the rain. But you can handle rain as long as it's not super windy. So that'll be what you have to watch out for. And I think it'll affect both teams, like you brought up at the beginning of the question.
You mentioned Sanders, and last year he said that this team, or he said that last year, this team was coming up with crucial plays, magical plays even, and he's saying that's not the case this year. Why is he saying that?
Well, because the ball after the first couple of weeks hasn't necessarily bounced their way. Now, they did get a game winner, or won a game in the opener that Thursday night against Carolina when Graham Gano misses a field goal. But you look at just looking at the last Kansas City game, with the Chiefs able to march 80 yards, and then Tyreek Hill gets that score late. And those are plays that the Broncos were able to prevent from happening. And I mentioned the Bradley Roby play a year ago. I mean, they won 11 games by 7 points or less. So you had, whether it's Mile High Magic or Lady Luck or whatever, something was on your side. And for whatever reason this year, it's just not. I mean, we know that sports isn't all about luck, but good teams kind of make their own luck. And at some point, that luck can run out. I mean, you just have to go out and make plays. And looking back at the Tennessee game, a game they could have won, Benny Fowler drops a wide open pass. It basically hits them in the face on the goal line, and you have to have that catch. Those are catches that were certainly seemed like they were made last year, and they just haven't been made this year. So it's funny, though, because we talked about this a bunch on Denver Sports 760. I do a show with Dave Logan, voice of the Broncos, and the Broncos in the 33 years that Pat Bowlen's won the team have had a winning season 28 times. They've been above 500. And so that's a pretty good mark. Plus, we know all the Super Bowls they went to, the 3 that they've won. And then you talk about teams like Cleveland or the Vikings or the Chiefs, who they're playing this week, that haven't been to the Super Bowl since 1970. So the Broncos, you know, if they don't make the playoffs, which would be unfortunate for them and their fans, and obviously don't win a Super Bowl, would stink. I mean, they've had 4 consecutive 12-win seasons. The Chiefs in 57 years have had 4 12-win seasons. So it's a little bit of rich people problems around here. And while I think everybody wants to be in the playoffs and wants to go to a playoff game or at this point watch their team in the playoffs, they understand that they've still got the championship gear from last year, and that'll have to hold them over until they make whatever tweaks they need to make to this roster and get back in the playoff hunt.